Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Wrestling Doesn't Make Sense. It is the podcast on the internet. I don't know if this is a podcast, it's some kind of show on the internet where me and John talk about pro wrestling and whether or not it makes sense. And today we have decided that we're going to talk about something that a lot of the wrestling world seems to be talking about right now, which regards the war of words between MJF and CM Punk,
Mm-hmm.
which happened last week on, is it Dynamite?
It was, yes. Kicked off Dynamite.
There's a lot of initials going on for those two fellows. You
This is
notice that?
true. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
A lot of the heavy lifting right there with those initials, which is interesting, isn't it? Remember the heady days of pro wrestling whenever people had like names, and now it's all abbreviations. Triple H started it.
He ruined it for everyone.
He doesn't get enough credit for the hard work he did, or maybe HBK did. It was the click. Whatever way you want to look at it, the click ruined wrestling forever.
And then X-Pac came along.
I mean, nobody knows what the fuck any of that means. The fuck does X-Pac mean? Was it on this show where I was talking about how the members of DX had just the most incomprehensible names?
No,
Like
but it's true.
how did you look at like DX and think this is a group of really like legit badasses? This one's called. This one is just his name is just 3 H's. So that's pretty badass. This guy is called X-Pac, whatever the fuck that means. This guy is called Mr. Ass. Watch out for that guy. This is the Road Dog. What? China had the most badass name of all of them.
I'd say all those names, strike fear into the hearts of their opponents.
Mr. Ass. Oh boy, just what a strange combination. The Heartbreak Kid. That doesn't sound badass at all, It's just very strange. And yet they were like, everybody was like, watch out for DX.
Mm-hmm.
I find that to be very strange. But we're not talking about DX today. We're talking about the war of words between MJF and CM Punk. You've seen this segment by now.
Yes, yeah.
Everybody and their fucking mother has seen this segment by now. Well, first of all, before we get into the segment too far, did you watch Dynamite?
Yeah, I watched the whole shebang.
Okay, because I just seen the promo.
Mm-hmm.
I don't watch Dynamite anymore. I find something else to do with my time, and I'm a much happier man because of it. But what I will say is that it seems like there's been a bit of a shift in like I said, I haven't been watching the shows, but from the vibe I'm getting from AEW, it seems like recently there's been a bit of a shift, and there was a shift that made me. There was originally a shift that made me stop watching that show because it was just really gimmicky and silly, and stuff wasn't like nothing made any sense.
Mm.
And I felt like a lot of this had to do with the elite, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega being the focal parts of the show. I don't know if this was by intention or design or whatever, but that's how I felt. Was that my dislike for the show seemed to correlate with them being all over the show.
Yeah, yeah.
And it wasn't just them, but other parts of the show also didn't make any sense and was also gimmicky. But it seemed to correlate. And I've noticed that now that CM Punk has come in and Daniel Bryan has come in, and conversely, Kenny Omega has taken some time off, and I think the Young Bucks are taking time off as well.
Yeah, they weren't on this week's show at all.
Right. So from what I've heard, the more recent episodes of AEW Dynamite have not been a total chore to sit through.
Mm-hmm.
And is that because of the lack of the super elite, for example, or is it because of the influx of this newer talent like CM Punk and Daniel Bryan who know how to work, and also know how a lot of this stuff goes together. Because I felt like that was part of the problem in old AEW, was that it was very nice to have all these guys on TV that hadn't really had the television exposure before, but you also were very glaringly showing off the fact that none of these guys seemed to be ready to work on TV. And I didn't like watching that. But you get a guy like Punk or Bryan, they know exactly what they're doing. They've worked on TV. They know how to get their shit across on TV, and they know how to do all this stuff. So is it a surprise that the show seems to be getting better at the same time that these professionals have come onto the show? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say really, because like everyone's tastes are different and whatnot, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who liked, the antics of Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks when they were dressing up as basketball guys, or yeah. And if you did find that entertaining, more power to you. But yeah, I mean, that wasn't really my kind of thing either, and it did make sitting through Dynamite a bit of a chore. And yeah, I think it's just a good thing for them to not have that like presence on the show for a little while, just to freshen it up a bit and put the focus elsewhere. And this segment was like a really good way to kind of put that focus somewhere else, but in a major way. CM Punk and MJF are obviously two guys who know how to talk and know how to kind of get under the skin of the fans as well, like, and really make them feel something. So the fact that they were in the ring, like sparring off one another and doing it in sort of a shooty kind of way as well, with all the various references to WWE stars and like Punk's history there and whatnot. So I mean, it was good. It was kind of what you don't see enough of, really, like that kind of blurring of the lines and people seemingly like taking actual shots at one another. And it was refreshing and well done. And yeah, I got to say, I really enjoyed this segment.
I enjoyed it too. I thought it went a little too long, personally. There was a point where I'm like, okay, you guys are still talking. I didn't think it was so engaging that I got lost in it, for example.
That's fair enough.
I did enjoy it. Like you said, it was two pros who are really good on the mic, talking on the mic to each other. Like people, this is one of the things when Punk came in that people were like, him versus MJF is going to be money, because those two guys can talk really well, and it's going to be fun to watch them on the mic. Personally, I'm going to say this. I don't know if everybody else agrees with me, or if I am just in the total minority here, but I'm really annoyed that they stopped the CM Punk Eddie Kingston thing already, because like for that pay-per-view, they had all sorts of storylines going on. And then 2 weeks before that pay-per-view, 2 weeks, which is something we've given the WWE shit for plenty of time. 2 weeks before that pay-per-view, they set up Kingston versus CM Punk. So then that means a week later, before the big pay-per-view, we get to see Kingston and Punk going back and forth on the mic. And that was wonderful. Because again, these are two guys who know what they're doing and know how to talk. And that was just a wonderful, just two guys. Like, it felt real. And that's exactly what you want, right?
Yeah.
And then they had their match at the pay-per-view, and that's it. That was the end of it. And for all the stuff Eddie Kingston was saying about, Punk not respecting him and making him feel like a joke and all this shit, for that to only last like a week and a half for one pay-per-view match and one and done, felt really like not cool at all. Like that, it felt like Eddie Kingston deserved more, given the amount of time and effort he put into it. Right?
Yeah, and well, not only that, but like him losing like that and then CM Punk moving on, like it
Right.
instantly kind of proves Punk right, like everything he was saying about him.
Exactly, which goes against what Kingston was saying. If you were booking that kind of thing and Kingston was talking like that with that kind of promo, you work that angle out to a successful conclusion. That's like Kingston Punk beating Kingston like that. That's the first part of the storyline. That's not the end of it. But they have this weird. You know what? It's so weird between the two companies. And the WWE do too many rematches, and AEW don't do any.
Yeah.
Like they just, it's a total like 180 between the two companies. In that WWE will drag out a storyline past its conclusion to the point where at some point there's no storyline anymore. They're just fighting, right? And AEW hype shit up to make it seem like there's going to be more rematches and stuff, and give you reasons as to why there would be rematches, and then they don't. Like the Kenny Omega, Bryan Danielson draw, time limit draw. I was like, that's great, that's perfect, because that leads to second match easily. That's smart. But they didn't do it. And if they do it next year and go, well, it's a callback to last time, long-term booking, nobody's going to care. That's stupid. People didn't like that time limit draw being on TV to begin with. And I did, because I thought, well, if it leads somewhere, then it all makes sense. But if it doesn't lead anywhere, then what's the point, right? So I'm a little annoyed about this Eddie Kingston thing, because if you look at Eddie Kingston's promos and on all the storylines he's been involved with, they've all been like this. They've all been like stopgaps. And he's done a really good job with every single one of them. But him versus Moxley, which happened this time last year, that thing with Moxley happened just because they weren't ready to do Moxley versus Omega yet. And Kingston worked his ass off, and he cut such great promos, and he built people. I wanted to watch that match. He made people interested in that match. And I thought that if they were smart, this thing they would do is say, fuck Kenny Omega right now. Kingston's done such a good job with this. We can stretch this out into a feud. You could have Moxley and Kingston trade the belt back and forth. That would look great. And then have Kenny Omega throw a spanner in the works and just interrupt all that shit and take the belt for himself. And then run away. Wouldn't that have made more sense as to why Tony Khan was pissed at Kenny Omega for taking the belt to begin with? Remember, he was all pissed that Kenny Omega took the belt, but there was no reason why. And then there was no follow-up to that either.
And then he was like appearing on Impact in like commercials, basically cheering the fact that Kenny Omega was the champion.
Like, why? Like, they don't. That's one of the AEW are really bad at the storyline part of it.
The finesse of the storylines.
Yes, like they come up with ideas, but they don't link together right. Stuff just kind of happens week to week because they have time to fill. They don't think about like how to chain it together. And I'm like, well, if you did do that shit with Moxley and Kingston properly, then you can chain it together with the Kenny Omega stuff, and then you can chain that onwards, and then you've got reason for the fucking Moxley and Omega matches to go on forever, because that strangely was one they did a lot. If you remember, the first like 3 or 4 months was Omega and Moxley.
Yeah.
And again, there was no story there. The story was just Omega versus Moxley. I'm like, well, if they had nuance there, they could tell it. But it feels like every time Eddie Kingston gets put into a storyline, they just cut the legs off it because it has no purpose other than to fill in time as a stopgap. That's what it felt like last year. That's what it felt like with the CM Punk one. And I'm disappointed at that, because I think Eddie Kingston deserves a lot more than that. Because he's proven on the mic that he can fucking hang. He's one of the better talkers in that company.
Absolutely.
Right? And they're just like, whatever. But again, and this is why they should put him on TV more and work with it, because it seems like Eddie Kingston isn't. They're doing the same thing WWE do, which is, Eddie Kingston, it doesn't figure into our plans right now. He's not the guy we want to get over right now, which is totally why they should get him over. Because that's the shit they say they're going to do, right? They're going to listen to the fans. They're going to like give people, they've given him opportunity, and he's proven that he's worth that opportunity. Follow up with it. Don't just go, oh, well, he's not Hangman Adam Page. We need to see this bullshit story through to its conclusion. And again, that was a storyline that made sense to Tony Khan, but they didn't connect the dots right.
Yeah.
right? I felt like that was a big letdown too. But whatever. It's a whole other fucking storyline. The point is, I was a little annoyed to see them just cut the legs off Eddie Kingston. And while I am super excited at the idea of Punk versus MJF, I wish they'd give him a little bit more respect to Eddie Kingston.
No, I totally know what you mean. And I think Kingston has kind of had a bit of bad luck when it comes to these storylines, like you say, where he comes in, does a fantastic job of holding up his end of the bargain and making people want to see the matches involving him. And then he pretty much loses and is, like moves on to the next story, essentially, which I guess is a sign that he's obviously a valuable player in terms of AEW's hierarchy, because he's someone who can like fit that slot and just come in and do the job, and you get something pretty special with him. And I guess he's almost getting pigeonholed into that role though, where he's always going to be like the bridesmaid and never the bride. And you know, I'm sure he's happy enough. I'm sure he doesn't need like a world title or anything to kind of justify his decision to wrestle for AEW and all that kind of thing. But like, it would be nice if just once he'd kind of be put in a position where instead of being the bridesmaid, he could be the bride and he could get some of the focus and come out of these kind of storylines on top. And
Right. He doesn't win ever.
no, but I mean, the thing with Eddie Kingston is he's Teflon, really. He will bounce back every single time because he is so good at, talking on the mic and making people care, that the losses don't really seem to hurt him as much as they probably should. And that's a testament to Kingston as much as anyone else, because he can take those losses and still make people, care about him when he moves on to the next feud. And that's kind of a rare skill, really. So fair play to him.
True. I just think that it's tough for that audience because they seem to like everything.
Yeah, this is
You know
true.
what I mean? Like if you and me are like, well, logically, if a guy loses all the time, and his storylines don't seem to play out very, very long or for very often, at some point, the bloom comes off the rose. He turns into like a Dolph Ziggler kind of character, like a guy with all the talent in the world. But the more you see this guy, the more you're gonna go, well, this isn't gonna go anywhere, which is bad news. But again, that fan base, they love everything except Cody Rhodes.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Which is weird. The one person they boo is Cody Rhodes and MJF too. But you feel like they're really booing him just because he's a heel. Well, no. Let me rephrase that. I feel like MJF is the only real heel in AEW.
I mean, yeah, I would probably agree with that.
Like he's a proper heel. He doesn't give a shit if people like him or not. He actively wants people to dislike him.
Yes.
And he's not concerned with being a cool guy or anything like this. So if people are out there and they think he's funny and they're cheering him, he'll find a way to insult everybody enough to make them hate him, and because that's what a proper heel does, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's the only guy in that company that does that. All the other heels are like cocky, cool heels. They're playing it up for laughs, or they're trying to they're not being heels, they're not really like healing it up that much, as it were. Whereas MJF does a lot. He's that again. This is why he works really well with CM Punk, because Punk seemed to have been cheered a lot again up until his match with Eddie Kingston.
Yeah.
He was being cheered a lot because he was a hometown guy. He kind of returned, And the problem with him against Eddie Kingston was, like we said, Kingston, that people love him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's a proper underdog. People really liked him. And not to say that they were sick of CM Punk already, but that Eddie Kingston did such a good job of hyping himself up as a real underdog face that people want to see succeed. that they were booing CM Punk, and now we're straight back into Punk being a clean-cut babyface again.
Mm.
You know, which you know, it plays to AEW's strange no heels and babyfaces philosophy, which is ridiculous. But you've got MJF, the only guy who acts like a heel and is rightfully booed for that because he goes out of his way to make people boo him. You've got the CM Punk who was booed just because he was against Eddie Kingston, and now they love him again. Which again is annoying for AEW to just do another face versus face match because somebody has to be booed. It's just the way it is. You can't like both of the guys because they both can't win. It's silly. And then they boo Cody Rhodes. And I think they're booing Cody Rhodes because Cody Rhodes is gearing up for like a real slow burn heel turn. Because if he's not, then he's an idiot.
Well, I mean, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right, but like, doesn't it seem like he's gearing up to turn it, like, be a heel?
Well, I think the way I see it is it didn't start off that way. I think he was content to be a face and keep doing his over the top, like super patriotic kind of like old school baby face kind of shtick, and he was happy to do that, thinking, oh yeah, the fans will love me forever. And quite rightly, the fans didn't love him forever. They got sick of it, and like, you know, sick of how pompous he came across as well a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's no wonder that, like, you know, the fans started shitting all over him. But now that they have, and it's, you know, getting worse and worse, as evident by last week's Dynamite, where he couldn't even throw his weight belt into the crowd without them chucking it back at him. Yeah, I think they're going to play into that, and it's a smart move to do, to play into it and have him eventually pull the trigger and turn heel. But I mean, the problem is the way the AEW audience tends to work. Like, if he does turn heel, it probably end up becoming a babyface again because it become like the cool heel, and you know, he's just kind of back to square one again.
Fucking Click, man, with their cool heels. I told you, they ruin everything. Well, yes. Well, Cody Rhodes has gone on record as saying he's never going to turn heel.
Which is exactly what a heel would say.
Exactly. And like, if you look at their bullshit long-term storyline stuff, if you look back at it now and think about Cody Rhodes saying, I'm never going to be a heel, and I'm never going to challenge for that heavyweight championship.
Mm-hmm.
If he turns heel and challenges and wins the heavyweight championship, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really, really good shit. If they do it. You know what I mean? Don't you think they're the kind of company that are like either Cody Rhodes sticks to his guns, or like, nope, I said I wasn't gonna do it, so I'm not gonna do it. You know, or they're like, people are gonna see it coming, let's not do it, and then just don't. And like, they could really miss. Cody could actually like have a really good run there if he wanted to, and do it properly. But whether or not he does it is yet to be seen. I don't know. I think that the seeds are there. Whether or not he does it is a whole other matter. But yes, so we've got really the biggest heel in AEW, which is MJF, against a very, very popular member of the roster. I don't know if Punk is the most over guy in that company, because like I said, I don't watch it that much anymore. But he's very over.
He's super over. And, you know, he was the guy who drew over 1 million viewers on Rampage, which, you know, has never even come close to doing that again. But, you know, he's clearly got more name value than a lot of members of the roster. And you know, we've kind of talked before as well about how they kind of lost a lot of the special feeling about his return to wrestling by just not really doing anything with him for the first few months. Just like, you know, he'd show up and do his happy to be there kind of shtick. playing up to the fans, and then just having random matches against people who sort of weren't in his league, and like just
He should be beaten, no problem.
yeah, exactly. And it shouldn't be like a big, long, drawn out match, and yet they typically were. And I mean,
every time.
and the thing that annoyed me about last week's Dynamite with this segment was that
What happened afterwards, right?
yeah, exactly. They did all this great job of building CM Punk up, and like building up the rivalry between him and MJF, and like taking shots at each other and making you excited to see that match. And then immediately after, he goes like over 10 minutes with QT Marshall. I mean, come on.
What the fuck?
He should be just like taking him out in, less than a minute, basically.
Yes. Especially after that.
Yeah.
Especially after that big war of words with fucking... Because they did a thing where they talked about how... wasn't it that one where they... Oh, no, I'm thinking of the Hangman Page thing where he talked to Omega and he's like, he talked to Danielson maybe. I beat Omega in under 30 minutes.
Mm.
Because I was thinking of them fighting Darby Allin. Wasn't there some kind of reference to them, to Punk and MJF fighting Darby Allin, though? He did need a ring to beat him, wasn't that it?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Right. So they had all this shit going on. And I'm like, wouldn't you think that after that kind of back and forth with these two guys where... And that's the start of the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't you think with these, like, those two guys are feeling really, really good. Start off the show, the crowd's hot. They're behind CM Punk. He's got all that adrenaline going. He's got the fans behind him. He's against QT Marshall, who, historically doesn't have the greatest, like, fucking success when it comes to anything. You know what I mean? What's his big claim to fame? That he lost to the Big Show or that he lost to Cody Rhodes? Like, why would anybody give a shit about him against CM Punk, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason to think that he's going to be competitive against CM Punk. The only thing that would make you think that, like you said, is the fact that with every other CM Punk match that he's had, he's been fighting nobodies and he's been going 15, 20 minutes with them.
Mm.
Why would this match be any different? And funny enough, it wasn't any different. But you're like, with all that adrenaline from the crowd behind him and him as a face and trying to make a fucking statement to MJF, wouldn't it have made sense for him to knock this guy out in under 5 minutes?
Exactly, yeah.
And they're like, nope, let's not do that. It's so ass backwards. Because I liked that promo, and then I heard he fought QT Marshall right after that. And you're like, well, what the fuck? Because it takes the sheen off CM Punk. Right? How often has MJF fought this year?
Yeah, well, I mean, he doesn't really wrestle a whole lot at all. I think he's probably had about like 5 matches all year or something like that.
Right, because he doesn't have to. Because he can talk, and he can, like, he's got his fucking crew with him who can do most of the heavy lifting. That's the whole point of having Wardlow with him.
Yeah.
Where was Wardlow? The point of that is to have MJF out there on TV, but not, like, unnecessarily getting his feet wet, because then it takes the shine off it, right? You want to see MJF when it counts, and CM Punk versus MJF is when it counts. That's great, but that works for both guys. If CM Punk's in there week after week just dicking around with nobody whatsoever, who cares? Especially when he's going these big competitive matches that go on forever.
Yeah.
You want to, like, it kind of takes the fun off it. So I thought that was really silly. I agree with you there. I thought that whole thing was, again, like, it's a slam dunk, and then they mess it up. That's the thing with AEW. They'll do something great, and then right after that, they'll do something silly, And so I didn't like that, but I did like the promo.
But I'll tell you what, though, there was a part in the promo where MJF sort of made this point as well, where he pointed out that since Punk's return, he's like struggled to beat the dregs of the roster, essentially, or guys that he should at least be beating up. So, like, maybe that was a deliberate choice. I don't know. Like maybe that was done to prove MJF right in his criticism in a way. But like you say, if he had just like taken QT Marshall out like within 30 seconds or whatever, then that would have been a good counterpoint by CM Punk as well, like saying, well, I don't, struggle against everyone. Like, some of these guys are new and different and whatnot, but he can still get the job done when he needs to. But yeah, they
Right.
didn't take that route at all.
That's a good point, in that they actually mention that in the promo, where they're like, you've been struggling to fucking beat some of these guys, and then Punk's like, no, and then straight away proved them right. And for them to do all that just for this to be the payoff is ass backwards as well, right? For Tony Khan to say, hey, Punk, we want you to wrestle a bunch of schlubs every week. And the reason for that is, in a couple of weeks' time, MJF's going to say, oh, you guys can't go the distance with all these guys in one promo, and it'll sound great. Like if that's the reason behind it, then that is also ass backwards. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Is why you wouldn't put it past him, I don't know. What did you think about the constant WWE digs? Because
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it was constant anyway. Like, I think it was done subtly enough that aside from the Miz, who got like the direct call out, and to be fair, like, yeah, I think that was a good burn as well. So
that was good, yeah.
But yeah, he just kind of, obliquely referenced the hustle, loyalty, and respect, and King of Kings or whatever it was about Triple H, and the jab about Tony Khan not having a daughter that MJF could marry and sort of, build his career on. But like it wasn't like dominating the promo, and I mean, why not reference that stuff? Because that is like an important part of, CM Punk's history. As much as he doesn't want to dwell on his time in WWE, but then that's a good reason for the heel to kind of pick up on it and make those references,
Right.
especially when AEW fans as well are so like tribal and anti WWE to the point where any kind of mention of that will get them booing as well. Like even Daniel Bryan referencing how he, wrestled the night or the day or the week after WrestleMania this year to say, how tough he was. And like the fans booed that, like, no, WrestleMania, you can't mention that. It's just, it's easy heat, and it kind of worked in the context of the promo.
I agree with you for the most part. I did think the line about Tony Khan having a daughter, so MJF could marry the daughter and become the king of AW or whatever the fuck that was, right? You know the one I'm talking about. Right?
Mm-hmm.
At first, I'm like, what a zinger. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, what the fuck kind of line is that? Like, would just wait till Tony Khan has a daughter and then, like, that was such a weird, like, that, like, I'm like, come on, man. Triple H is just back after having a fucking heart attack. You know what I mean? Yeah, didn't need this one right now. Like, I thought that was just, I'm not necessarily defending Triple H, but at the same time, like that one seemed like they didn't need to go with that one.
I mean,
I thought that was a strange dig to take. And, I get what they mean, but I feel like it was a bit weird,
But Triple H has heard that accusation for 20 odd years. That's like, water off a duck's back to him, I'm sure.
But that's what I mean. I feel like they almost like they shoehorned it in.
Mm.
Because they're like, what's the thing about Triple H? I'm like, Triple H by this point has pretty much showed that, that's not why he got to the. It certainly helped.
Oh yeah.
It was a real big help, but he's got other shit going on, and to your point as well, in that it made a lot of sense for these guys to reference that. Like it's totally the kind of thing that a heel would do to reference CM Punk's older time, and it does make sense. because it was such a big part, and all the fans remember it. CM Punk, but like, this isn't the first WWE reference Punk has made, and like you said, it's not the first. Wasn't what? When was that Daniel Bryan thing? Was that the show before this one?
Yeah, I think so. When he was basically calling out Adam Page and questioning why he wasn't wrestling that week on Dynamite, I think.
Yeah, like you don't want to see him do it too much.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
Then it does seem a bit like, you remember that show that's on a different channel right now that you go watch? You know, they shouldn't have to. All their jobs shouldn't be at the WWE's expense, right? So
Yeah.
while I thought it worked okay in this promo for the most part, you know, I don't want to see CM Punk and all of CM Punk's opponents having to rely on that too much, because I feared that's what might happen, that they might all just start referencing the WWE too much, and then that doesn't make their show look very good.
Well, I
You know,
mean, there's no harm in acknowledging WWE. Everyone knows it's out there and it exists, and wrestlers have appeared there before. So it seems silly doing what WWE do and just like ignoring the fact that anything else exists outside of WWE.
yeah,
So I think it's a double-sided sword or whatever the fucking phrase is. But
yeah. What the fuck is it? Double-edged
yeah,
sword. Yeah, we're pretty
there
close.
you go. Yeah, and I mean, like, you don't want to do it too much, but acknowledging it and using it the right way can be useful. But
Yes.
yeah, I get your fears about
Yeah.
not wanting it to become too much of a thing and too easy of a like target as well. Like if you just keep referencing that to kind of get heat on someone.
Because then it's just a crutch. Then it's
Yeah.
just like this, just the part of the promo where they make fun of the WWE, and you're like, all right, and fair enough, the WWE are worth making fun of. But if that's what your show turns into, where you're like, you know, taking shots at every opportunity, you don't have to do that. It's a bit silly. I get the need to reference it, and they totally should. But like, not. I don't want to see that be the crutch for every single CM Punk promo against people.
Mm.
And I'd be very annoyed if that continued. But yeah, I mean, like it was fun to watch this promo because it was two guys who came out and sounded natural, and they're both very good at what they do. They're both very good at talking on the mic and sounding natural. And they play well against each other. So I thought this was pretty fun, and I'd be interested to see where they go with it from now.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of what we've been begging for them to do with CM Punk since he started, because, like we mentioned, he's had like lots of random matches, but aside from the Eddie Kingston storyline, which, like you said, only ran for pretty much 2 weeks, he hasn't really sunk his teeth into anything and like had a proper feud since signing with AEW. So if they can drag this out and give it some proper build over the next few weeks and not rush into a match like they kind of have tended to do a lot of the times, I think this could potentially be a good thing, and I think it's got the potential to kind of get some of the spark back that CM Punk has sort of lost since he's signed with AEW and kind of just been meandering about, not really doing much of anything. So I think it's a good thing.
Yes, I agree. That's the one thing we've been clamoring for, is like an actual CM Punk storyline that we can get our teeth sunk into, something legit, something interesting. And MJF has proven that he can work these long-term storylines. We saw him work in a very infamous storyline with Chris Jericho this year, which was interestingly paced, I think.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it.
Where MJF beat Jericho, what was it, like 3 or 4 times?
Mm-hmm.
And then Jericho beat MJF once, and that was the end of the feud.
Pretty much.
You're like, that how like fucking ass backwards is that? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, and then there was all the like multi-person matches, starting off with the War Games equivalent, wasn't it?
Started off with that shit.
And then moving on to the Stadium Stampede, and then doing the 5 tasks of Jericho, whatever the fuck it was. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing was just. I mean, it started off good with the way they kind of built up Jericho and MJF working together, bringing MJF into the inner circle, and like setting the stage for them to kind of have their falling out and then their feud. But yeah, when that actually happened, it was not good.
No, sir. So hopefully CM Punk has learned a little bit from that.
Hopefully MJF has.
But I can imagine, because Jericho is fucking blowing his own trumpet over that, going, what a great storyline that was. I'd be really afraid of MJF, because it was MJF's idea, apparently, to do the fucking song and dance number. Which means that he's not without fault. Old MJF, he's not perfect. And I would hate for CM Punk and MJF to break into a song and dance. You know what I mean?
I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
We didn't think that was going to happen at all. Then it happened. I have faith in CM Punk to not do that, But I really also hope that the two of them, MJF and Punk, take a look at that storyline with Jericho and see what not to do with the pacing and with the way the story is told. Because, again, they could end up telling a really good storyline here. But I've said this before, and been burned many a time. I'm like, if they were smart, they could do this. And it doesn't often play out like that. So, and again, like you said, you would think two guys like this, they can't screw this up, right?
No, surely not.
Surely not. Surely Punk and MJF, this is going to be great. It has to be. With these two guys who are so smart and good at what they do, it has to be good. So yeah, I guess we'll just, as an opening kind of, salvo, it's pretty good. It's getting people off on the right track. It's making people interested in seeing these two guys fight. I'm certainly interested in it. And I haven't been interested in anything in AEW for a long time. So I'm really intrigued as to where they go. But it's whether or not they can follow up with it is the important thing.
Yeah. But then we say that about pretty much everything they do, really. So.
Yeah, and how often do they follow it up really well? Good point. So I guess we'll have to see. Hopefully in a couple of weeks' time, we'll end up doing another episode where we're talking about how great something else MJF and Jericho related was. That's what I hope. I hope that we're not in a couple of weeks' time talking about how shitty something is.
Yeah.
God, can you believe what MJF and Punk did? God, not again. I really hope that at some point we're like, wow, they did something really good there. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this goes. But when's their next big pay-per-view? It's like in March or something, is it?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the date is, but I know it's many months away now because they only do 4 pay-per-views a year. So yeah, it's probably going to be sort of March, April sort of time at the latest.
Yeah, well, we're too close to WrestleMania time.
Indeed.
Now, wouldn't that be a feather in their cap if they could put on a WrestleMania quality caliber of match around about WrestleMania time on an AEW show? I would think that would be very, very good if they could pull it up. So I'm excited. I'm cautiously optimistic, I think is the way we're gonna put it. We'll see how it goes. Is there anything else you want to say about this Punk MJF business?
Well, not so much about Punk MJF, but like I just wanted to briefly mention how good Bryan Danielson's been, like doing the subtle heel turn where he's basically coming for the title, and he's not afraid of hurting anyone's feelings by going for it, and he's showing that more sort of aggressive edge as well, where he's basically stomping in the heads of Dark Order members and making them tap out. And I think it's been a lot of fun, and like I say, the subtlety of it all is really good, and kind of just highlights why Daniel Bryanson. Hang on, what did I say? Daniel Bryanson.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, man.
That's close enough.
It's been a long day. Bryan Danielson has, he's one of the best wrestlers in the world, like legit. Like he knows what he's doing, and he knows how to kind of not just wrestle amazing technical matches, but like get people reacting the right way. And I mean, I'm for all the kind of problems we've had with the way Punk's been used so far, I've had no such problem with Bryan Danielson, really. Like, I mean, like you said, there could have been the follow-up with him and Kenny Omega, but he's kind of been quietly doing his own thing to build to this situation now where he can like bounce that draw off the fact that he should be, challenging for the world title, and he won the title tournament or like number one contenders tournament, whatever it was, to earn the shot anyway. So yeah, I think they've kind of built him up pretty well and are using him a hell of a lot better than they've used CM Punk so far.
I would agree with that too. Yes, you and me both have talked about how Daniel Bryan has been one of the best, if not, in my opinion, he's the best modern wrestler of this day and age. And it's good to see him in a place where he can just kind of prove that, because AEW seem to be giving him a lot of leeway, and he seems to be very comfortable just going out there, and he's having a lot of fun. And I'm interested to see if the stuff with Daniel Bryan actually goes anywhere regarding like long-term storylines, or if he's just happy to just kind of just be there, and so long as he gets the leeway to have his fun, is he just happy to just be there and do that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I could see that, like, he seems like he's the kind of guy that they should have been putting in against random people and going 20 minutes, because he seems like that would be right up Bryan's street. That seems to be way more up his kind of street. What he wants to do, go out and just wrestle people. He loves wrestling. Let him wrestle. That seems like the smartest thing to do. It's strange that they put that and give it to Punk, But yes, I do agree that Daniel Bryan's doing some great. He just seems like he's having fun, and you can't knock a guy for that. So, interesting, him versus Hangman again. Like, I feel like they're doing it just for the sake of something for both men to do. To start off Hangman Page's title reign with a bang, to have him defend against a guy as legit as Bryan Danielson. I think that makes sense. It's gonna do wonders for Hangman Page. That's smart. That makes sense. So, yeah, I do. I dig that. Although, like I said, I feel like Danielson might just be happy to be there, as opposed to, like let's see where he is 6 months from now. Right? I feel like Punk is slowly building himself back up to that point, like up to the main event kind of kind of thing. Whereas Danielson is just kind of happy to fight anybody. He doesn't need to be built up, and therefore doesn't mind if he isn't built up. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
No, I know what you mean. Like, he's not in it for like the glory or anything. That's not even to say that CM Punk is, but like he's not there to kind of be the star of the show, but just to like play a role and help as much as he can with the product. And and have fun whilst doing it. And I think,
Yeah.
you know, that's always been his kind of mandate. And maybe he wasn't able to do that as much in WWE as he would have liked. So that's why AEW is sort of a better fit for him, really.
Right. Like that all makes sense. Really, if that's just what he wants to do, AEW is the perfect place to let him do that. But whether or not it's going to go to any further big long-term thing, or if it just ends up with him dicking around with the Dark Order, you know what I mean? We'll have to see. But yes, I do agree that this seems interesting as well, the way that they're playing it. So, like I said, it does seem like there's been a shift, like they're actually trying to do shit that now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I pretty much AEW is the only show I'm watching at the moment. Like I've kind of fallen out of I fell out of watching Raw and SmackDown a long time ago. But recently NXT 2.0, that's just kind of lost me a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
And NXT UK as well. I just sort of missed a couple of weeks and haven't got back into it, even though it wasn't bad or anything, but it's just, I don't know, it's just nothing that really grabbed me and made it like essential viewing. Whereas AEW is, for all the, you know, the problems we've had with it over the last couple of years, it's still closer to what I want from pro wrestling than anything WWE does at the moment. So yeah, you know, I will stick with it for the long haul, I think.
Okay, that's perfect because that means I don't have to watch it. As long as we've got you to. Thank you for taking that bullet for me.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. I mean, like for me, there was just too much on that show that annoyed the hell out of me that I couldn't watch it anymore. And like, I'm sure a lot of that stuff's been removed now. I'm sure it's a different program, but I just don't want to start that up again, you know. And maybe by the new year, I'll have changed my tune because, like I said, they're doing interesting stuff that is getting me interested. So there might be a point where I do start tuning in again sometime soon. But well, we'll see. You know, I've been burned so many times before by pro wrestling and by this company that I'm holding my I'm just waiting to see what happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair enough.
But yeah, there we go. So AW seem like they're on the right track at the moment with the with MJF and CM Punk doing their business. Bryan Danielson out there doing a very good job and having some fun. And most importantly of all, the Young Bucks not being on TV. I feel like they might be up to some good stuff. You know, maybe now is the time to tune back in. I don't know.
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the Young Bucks have apparently signed a new 3-year contract, I think it is. So they'll be back on TV sooner rather than later.
I know they'll be back. I just don't want them to be back. Oh boy. But yes, it seems like there's a bit of a shift going on in AW, and it'll be interesting to see where they take it.
Yes.
But I think that's it for this episode, is it?
Yeah, that'll do me.
That'll do. All right, guys. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back next week with some more fun talk about wrestling. It'll be amazing. Make sure you stay subscribed so that you can never miss a single second of amazing action, etc., etc. I think I did a really good job hyping it up that time.
Perfect.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. So thank you very much for listening, guys. We will see you in the next episode. So goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Where's the stop button?